All right, you've been thinking about place value, and I wanted you to be aware and take this to another depth. Just as an adult, as an educator, as a mathematician, I want you to see the ways of thinking that we want to instill, even in our kids with base 10. We want to instill these ways of thinking because we don't know where these kids are going in their future, where they may need, as you see on this screen, base 2 binary numbers. They may need base 8, or they may even need, if they're going into computer programming stuff and technical things like that, base 16. Yeah. And so how's the thinking? What I'm doing this for is so your brain can see that the ways of thinking that we're establishing in our kids in grades K and 1 when it comes to place value is the ways of thinking that persist to whatever level they get to. And I want you to have that experience, and I'll ask you some questions about this later on. But let's make sure you got it. So, base 2, there's only 2 symbols. When we keep track of quantities, you can either keep track of 0 or 1. Here's what I mean. So, imagine that we're just keeping track of blue dots again. So, if you had no blue dots, you would use the number 0 to represent that you have no blue dots. And if you had 1 blue dot, you would use the 1 to keep track of that you had 1 blue dot. You would keep track of single blue dots. You either have 0 or 1 of them. But as soon as you got to 2 of them, you have to bundle that group of 2 and move them over to the next spot. Now, when I put a dot here, you'd have to keep in mind that that's not just a single dot. That dot is representative of the bundle of 2 that we're moving over here. So we're going to keep track of bundles of 2. So this, if I had one bundle of 2 and a 0, if I had the number 1, 0 in the base 2 system, it's not 10. I know it looks like 10, but it's not a 10. It's a 1 bundle of 2 and no singles. So for us in base 10, you're just keeping track of 2 things. 1 bundle of 2 and no singles. And then I'll actually put it in this time, but if you put another bundle of 2, well, let me build it more slowly. So if you had 2 dots, you bundled them, moved them over, you have 1 bundle of 2 over here now. If you had 1 more dot, that would be 3. A 1, 1 would be 3. And then as soon as you got 2 dots over here, you would have to take those 2 dots, bundle them, and move them over to the next place value. And now you'd have 2 over here. And as soon as you have 2 over here, that would be too many because there's no such thing as the number 2. There's no symbol for 2 in binary. There's a 0 and a 1. And so if I got to 2 2s, I would have to bundle those 2 2s and move them over to the next place value. 2 2s, 4s. 2 2s is 4s. So you have to start keeping track of how many 4s you had. And if you had 1 bundle of 4, great, you'd have 1 bundle of 4. But as soon as you got to a second bundle, you'd have to bundle those and move them over to the new place with the new value. Now remember, these were bundles of 4. So if you had 2 4s, that would be 8. And you would keep on going over and over and over again. Do you see the patterning here? Now back in our previous video, maybe you saw it, but when you're keeping track of singles, that's just 2 to the 0 power. Because you have 0, 1. So if you had 2 to the 0 power, you have 1. And as soon as you got to your second dot, you'd have to move over and keep track of 2s, or 2 to the first power. And as soon as you got 2 2s, 2 squared, that'd be 4s. And as soon as you got to 2 sets of 4s, 2 times 4 is 8, which is the same as 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. Do you see the powers of 2? Now in the previous video, you saw the powers of 10 because we were at 10 symbols. Now we're going to see powers of 2. So if you had this number in binary, if you had 1, 1, 0, 1 in binary, what that means is, let me just write it up here, 1, 1, 0, 1, and we put a little sub 2 there, base 2. What number are we really considering here? Well, that's 1 bundle of 8, 1 bundle of 4, 12, no bundles of 2, and 1 bundle of 1. So 8, 4, 0, and 1. That would be a total of 13 in our base 10 number system. So if you wanted to represent the idea of 13 in base 2, you'd have to say, I have one bundle of 8, one bundle of 4, that's 12, no 2s, it's too many, but then one more single blue dot would be a total of 13. So 1101 base 2 is how you would write that number. Now what about in base 8? Now there's 8 symbols. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 symbols to keep track of here. 0 through 8. I'm sorry, 0 through 8. 0 through 7. I should have known that one. I kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. 0 through 7 in base 8. And so if you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if you had 6 dots, you would just draw a 6. If you had 7 dots, you'd be all good. You could draw the 7. But as soon as you got more than that, as soon as you got more than 7 single dots, if you got to that 8th dot, you'd have to bundle those 8 dots and move them over to the new place with a new value, and you'd start keeping track of bundles of 8. So you could have bundles of 8, and as soon as you got to 8 bundles of 8, can you imagine? If I had one bundle of 8, 2 bundles of 8, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not a problem. I would just use the appropriate symbol to tell you how many bundles of 8 I had. But as soon as I got to my 8th bundle of 8, I've run out of symbols. I don't have a symbol for 8. So I would have to take those 8 bundles of 8 and move them over to the next place value. Now, what would 8 eighths be? 8 eighths would be 64. And then you'd keep going, bundles of 64. And as soon as you got to 8 64s, you'd have to move them over. And here's where the exponents become really helpful. So this is 8 to the 0 power. You don't have any bundles of 8 yet. Then here you're keeping track of bundles of 8. And as soon as you got to the second 8, 8 eighths is 64. And then over here, you'd have 8 to the 3rd power, and those powers would just keep on growing as you bundled and moved over, increasing by powers of 8 in this case. And 8 to the 3rd power, in case you didn't know, 8 times 8 times 8, you would be keeping track of the 512s. This would be the 512s place. So that's just how we have to think. You have to keep unpacking bundles of 2, bundles of 8, or what if you had bundles of 16? Here's a crazy one. Suppose you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Suppose you had 12 blue dots. What number would that be in base 16? Well, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you had 12 blue dots in base 16, you would just say C base 16. And people who work with this kind of stuff all the time, when they see C base 16, they know that's the 12 blue dots. But as soon as you got to 13, 14, 15, 13, 14, 15, as soon as you got to 15, you would use the letter F to represent 15. But as soon as you got to 16 blue dots, you'd have to grab those 16 blue dots, bundle them up, and move them over to a new place with a new value. And so once again, see if you see the pattern. In this column, we're keeping track of single blue dots until you get to 16. Because we have a symbol for 15, it's F. But as soon as you get to 16, no more symbols. So now we're going to keep track of bundles of 16. So this is 16 to the 0 power. This is 16 to the 1st power. Now, can you imagine bundles of 16? However many you had. But as soon as you got to 16, we'd run out of symbols again. 16 16s, that is 16 squared. And if you need to check that one out, 16 squared is 256. You'd be in the 256's place. And then 16 cubed. And 16 cubed would be the pencil, the 4096's place. You'd just be keeping track of those. So no matter the place value, the idea is the same about running out of symbols bundling and moving to the next place value, bundling and moving to the next place value. Now, what's kind of cool about this, and I'm going to give you a chance to do this on your own as well. Well, I happen to be, at the making of this video, in base 10, that old. Now, when you see that number, I hope you're now seeing I have 6 singles and I have 10 bundles of 5 in my age. 10 bundles of 5, 5, 10, that's 50. And 6 singles, that's 56 in base 10. What would my age be if I wanted to go binary, that is base 2? How would I express my age if the only symbols I had to use were 1s and 0s? Well, let's see. The 1's place. I was supposed to say a 1. The 1's place. All right. Well, I would need a 1, possibly at least 1, right? I need a 1 in the 1's place, but as soon as I get to 2, I have to bundle and start keeping track of the 2's place. And then as soon as I got to 2 2's, I have to bundle and start keeping track of the 4's place. And as soon as I got to 2 4's, I have to bundle and start keeping track of the 8's place. And as soon as I get to as soon as I got to 2 8, I have to bundle and keep track of the 16's place. And as soon as I got to 2 bundles of 16, I have to start keeping track of the 32's place. And as soon as I got to 2 bundles of 32, I have to start keeping track of the 64's place. That is, in terms of exponents, this is 2 to the 0 power, 2 to the first power, 2 to the second power is 4, 2 to the third power, 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8, 2 to the fourth power, 2 to the fifth power, and 2 to the sixth power. All right, I don't need any of those yet. I'm not 64 yet, but I want to need a 32. But remember, in binary, I can only use 0s and 1s. So I have to put a 1 in the 32 spot. That would give me 32. I would need a 1 in the 16's place. So a 32 and a 16, that'd get me to 48. 48. I would need a 1 in the 8's place. So 132, 116, that's 48, and 1 8, that's 56. I wouldn't need any 4's or any 2's or any 3's. I would have it. And so if I wanted to express my age in base 2, I would say 111. 0, 0, 0 base 2. So 56 base 10 is 111, 0, 0, 0 base 2. I'm going to start using it. Hey, how old are you? 111, 0, 0, 0. Now for you, I hope you can see, keeping track of bases, 1s, 2s, 4s, 8s, 16s, 32s. So I have 132, 116, 48, 18, 56, nothing else. There's my age in base 2. What would my age look like in base 8? In base 8, you'd have the 1's place still. That is 8 to the 0 power. But then as soon as you got to a bundle of 8, you'd have to start keeping track of the 8's place. And as soon as you got to 8 8's, that would be 64, you'd start keeping track of the 8's place. And this is 8 to the first, 8 to the second. I'm not going to need even that, or 8 to the third. I'm not going to need that for sure. So I just need these 3 places. No, I only need these 2 places. All right, how many 8's do I need? Let's see, 8 is 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 48, 56. Yeah, I would need 7 in the 8's place and no singles. Hey, in base 8, I'm 7, 0. So 56, 5 10s, 50, and 6 1s, 56, base 10, is the same as 7, 0 in the 8's place. Because why? 7 in the 8's place, 7 groups of 8 is 56. 7, 0, base 8. Yeah, I don't like that so much. It's old. But hey, you can't say 70. Because what does 7T, the language of 7T means 7 10s and 0 1s. 50, make that 5T, 5 10s, 56. but this is just 70 base 8. This is just 111000 base 2. That's how we say it. All right, I'll stop there. Hey, why don't you go write your age and write it in base whatever. What base would you like? Do you want to go base 3, base 4, base 16? What do you want to use? Try one, see what you come up with.